our cells are energized by sunlight. Our bodies are energized from touching the earth, receiving electrons, pulling them into the earth, And then again, that water network of the body, the more you study water, you're like, my God, water is everything.
Yeah.
Forget the nutrition is so boring. I'm so tired of talking about it. It's like the water is what's really interesting to me.
Hey, Medicine Stories friends. Welcome to episode 104. I am Amber Magnolia Hill, today sharing my interview with Sarah Kleiner. The sun rules the rhythms and the well-being of all life on Earth, and humans are no exception to this rule. With the very recent, evolutionarily speaking, advent of indoor living and the even more recent advent of indoor lighting, we have inadvertently shut down the vital communication between sunlight and our cells. This is as upstream as it gets when it comes to health. And when we come back into relationship with the sun, all manner of issues like insomnia, obesity, infertility, but so much more can resolve. Let's talk about the science behind circadian rhythm and practical ways to heal with sunlight. Sarah Kleiner is a quantum health coach with the Quantum Biology Collective, levels 1 and 2, a certified nutrition coach with NASM, and has over 13 years of experience working one-on-one with clients to optimize nutrition, lifestyle, and mindset. Her goal is to shift the paradigm when it comes to circadian rhythms, health, and light, and help people integrate these principles into their lives in a modern world. You'll find much of what we talk about has been touched on before on this podcast. I will link to all those past episodes in the show notes. Sunlight, water as a liquid crystal, the matrix of the fascia, and quantum biology in general. There are 2 Patreon bonuses to go with this episode. And I'm stoked to tell you that Patreon is now offering a 7-day free trial. So you will find the link there in the show notes, which you can find by scrolling down from wherever you pressed play on this episode, or just going to patreon.com/medicine stories. So if you want to do the 7-day bonus, you can catch up on over 5 years of past Medicine Stories podcast bonuses, extra interviews with some guests, online courses, coupon codes, PDF guides, herbal recipes. There's like a ton of stuff there. So if you've kind of always wanted to do it, but never took the plunge, this new 7-day free trial offering is awesome. So the first of the 2 bonuses that go along with this episode is a 100% off link to Sarah's 3-day circadian kickstart course. You'll learn all about how your body's 24-hour internal clock runs in the background to carry out essential functions and processes for your overall health and wellness. This course covers the science behind your circadian clock and how that influences all the hormonal functions in your body, the specific hormonal functions that are put in motion by your lifestyle habits, how to set up your morning routine, even if you have to be at work before sunrise, must be in your car during sunrise, or have children, how to set up your evening routine for optimal sleep, and how your current habits might be influencing your body's ability to make adequate melatonin for deep sleep and repair functions, how to troubleshoot around weather, buildings, city life, etc., and more. The second bonus is just a short 10-minute audio recording of me sharing further thoughts on this episode and how it relates to my health journey, which I've just shared so much through the last 5.5 years on this podcast that I thought some folks might be interested. Like there's things that come up in this conversation with Sarah that are threads that are related to a lot of what I've talked about on this podcast before, but we didn't have time to dive into. So I talk about things like minerals, leptin, bedtime snack, pro-metabolic eating, weight gain, etc. Just kind of tying some things together that came up during the conversation, but we didn't have time to go into. I want to let you know too that there are 6 spots left now for my Costa Rica forest bathing retreat that's happening in late September. You might have heard me talk about it on the last episode 103, with my friend Susie Hazen, who will be joining me but it's basically going to be super chill and relaxing. That is how we have set up this retreat. The link to sign up if you'd like to go will be below in the show notes. I want to share right before we begin a paragraph from a book I'm reading right now. The brilliant book is called The Human Cosmos, Civilization and the Stars by Joe Marchant. And I just read this. I just happened to be reading this book for the last month or so and just read this paragraph a few days ago, and it just speaks perfectly to what this episode is about. The most important timing signal is sunlight, detected by cells in the retina of the eye. Information regarding the timing of sunrise and sunset is sent to a central pacemaker in the brain, which in turn regulates secondary clocks throughout the body. Not enough bright light during the day or too much light in the evening can dampen or disrupt these clocks, throwing the body's complex choreography into chaos. Rhythms weaken or become disconnected from each other, causing health problems from insomnia and depression to obesity, cardiovascular disease, and even cancer. Leading chronobiology researcher Russell Foster has warned that despite the modern technologies that enable us to wake, sleep, and work whenever we like, quote, human biology remains profoundly dependent on the 24-hour revolution of the Earth upon its axis. Our increasing separation from geophysical cycles is a ticking time bomb, he argues. I love this conversation and how it ties into my past conversations on minerals, because really what we're talking about here is elemental interbeing. The minerals in our bodies come from the stars. The sun sets the circadian rhythm that is like the master pacemaker for all the other hormonal cascades that happen in our bodies. And as Sarah and I talk about in this episode too, the moon, of course, has a profound impact, especially on women. I mean, it's not like fluffy pseudoscience to say that we are cosmic beings. We are deeply intertwined with the elements that were here before we were here. And these beings that we see when we look up in the sky are not distant and detached from us. They are so deeply interwoven with every cell in our body. And I just love learning about this and talking about it. So I really hope that you enjoy, benefit from, and learn some life-changing information from this interview with Sarah Kleiner. All right. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to Medicine Stories. I've had my life thoroughly changed since my friend Susie, and a recent podcast guest, told me to follow you on Instagram. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. It's so lovely to be here. And I'm so happy to hear that. That's really awesome.
Yeah, let's, start at the beginning. Your story, your life, your children. I just so interested. I have two girls who are 10 years apart, and yours are what, about 14, 15?
15.
Yeah, 15
years. Yeah.
And you learned a lot in the interim. And I'm also really interested, and we'll get into this after we hear more about you, but just this big picture of Homo sapiens evolved living outside, and the sun is everything to life on Earth. And we've disconnected ourselves from that reality very much to the detriment of our health.
100%, 110%. And it keeps, as I evolve in this journey, it continues to show itself in just a multitude of ways. And I continue to learn more. And the more I learn, the more I'm like, let me try to piecemeal this out to people who are watching my content in a way that they can understand and digest. Because I never want to overwhelm people completely, because it can be super overwhelming once you kind of have that light bulb moment. You're like, oh my gosh, what are we doing as a civilization? And how can I make this work when I have a busy life and I have kids and I have a job and I have all this stuff? So I always want to make it approachable for people so that they can do little things to implement. So yeah, it's a constant, it's a constant evolution and constant learning and unlearning.
Well, you're so good at that. I mean, that's why you have over 100,000 followers, is because you do make the content bite-sized and digestible. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess I could really say my health journey started with my daughter when she was a year. She regressed into non-speaking autism following a well
A
child
well
visit.
baby
I don't
visit.
know, a
Mhm.
well baby visit. I'm sure your listeners can kind of read between the lines on that one. We actually, the same night of that well baby visit, we were in the emergency room because she was throwing up uncontrollably and screaming uncontrollably. And they said, oh, well, this was a reaction to something that was administered to her earlier that day, but she'll be fine. And she never was fine. She
No,
could
it's
speak.
normal, right?
Yeah, it's normal. And she could speak better at 13 months than she could now at 15. It's
Mhm.
pretty tragic. And this is a story that happens to people every day. But they are told, we're told in the mainstream that it's these women that talk about these things are witches and they're liars and it's not real and science shows otherwise. But the narrative is slowly being stripped away every day. 2020 was a big, like, magnifying glass on this issue. And so I think people now, one of the things that came out of 2020 are more open to hearing information like this and stories like this. But
And
that was what started things for me.
there are so many
Oh,
stories.
it's everywhere. It's
And
everywhere. And yeah,
moms like you sharing your stories, and have inspired moms like me to just skip those well baby visits. So thank you.
yeah. Yep. And the my new baby, he has never had any of that intervention and he's amazing. I mean, he's doing amazing. The doctors are all like, because we do, for my husband, we see a doctor that allows us to skip all of those interventions. That's our compromise. And
Mm.
she's like, oh, he's so ahead. Oh my goodness. He's doing all this so early. I'm like, is it really early though? Or is it that all of our children are receiving these things that are causing them to be behind what they should actually be?
Right.
Are we injuring all these children? And maybe the injury doesn't manifest the way that it did for my daughter as severely for every child, but it manifests in other ways like ear infections and chronic illness and speech delays and, eczema and all these other things. I think that children are really a lot more sick these days than they were definitely when I was growing up.
Over half, one in two children and
Yep,
one in two adults has a chronic illness now.
exactly. And so we have to start looking at everything. I talk about the circadian health and the light story. Huge, huge, huge for our children. This is also something that, you know, is something we have to look at. But, that was I guess if you have a red pill moment in your health journey, that was mine because I had always just said, okay, whatever the doctors say, cool, I'll do what I'm told. All right. I just kind of had this like status quo life and that shook everything. It changed everything for me. I had to quit my job because I had to be home with her. She needed intense care and therapies, and it was just impossible for me to work. So I gave up my career and I was on that's the search. I became a mom that was like, I have to fix this problem. I have to reverse the damage that was done. And we drove, went New York, LA, Florida. We saw doctors all over the country. We tried all these different protocols and diets and detox protocols and everything. And unfortunately, we were really not able to undo the damage. And she still deals as a 15-year-old with significant, significant challenges that are very life altering for all of us. But, we are grateful that she's still here with us. We love her. That was the moment when I realized that I was being lied to about pretty much everything with our nutrition, with our food, and so it kind of sent me down this health journey rabbit hole. I eventually became a yoga teacher because it was my way of kind of managing stress. I was very stressed out. And so yoga was very helpful for me and meditation. So I actually became a teacher, and that was something that I could do and help other people while she started going to school a few hours a day, things like that. And so that was a huge part of my life for many years. And then my health really started going downhill. I would say my late 30s, mid 30s, I started having issues. There's just chronic stress does a number on your body, right? That's what it's like when you're raising a kid with special needs. There's always some stress happening. And so my health was kind of just really going downhill. And by the time I was about 39, I couldn't do yoga the way that I wanted to. I love to kind of do the more fun athletic types of yoga. And My joints were hurting so bad. My gut was such a mess. My skin, I was having eczema flares constantly. Had been to multiple GI doctors and they just were like, eat more fiber, take some fiber pills, whatever. It was just dumb. And so again, I'm like, I have to take my health into my own hands. And so I actually started doing a carnivore diet. I was told by a friend of mine to try that. And I was like, that's literally the most insane thing I've ever heard. Like, why would I do that? But I was like so desperate at the time that I decided to try it. And within about 30 days, all my skin issues were gone. My gut issues were gone. I felt great. My skin was cleared. I mean, everything was like amazing. I had a flat stomach for the first time in years. And so I'm like, this is it. I found it. And my mental health was like amazing, mental clarity. So I started this kind of Instagram page just as a joke, as called the Carnivore Yogi, which like was completely polarizing to a lot of people, but I ended up building a community there and really meeting a lot of cool people there. And then about 2 years into the carnivore journey, I realized that, I think the thing with elimination diets is that they're meant to be done for a period of time. And then we need to be adding in local seasonal foods. That's the way that we're meant to live. We don't really want to live in this constant state of, ketosis, more of like an eternal winter, really. But we're not supposed to do that. And so I decided I wanted to get pregnant. And I thought everything's optimized. I've been on this great diet for 2 years. I had just turned 41. And then we were like, we got to do this baby thing. If we're going to do it, it's like now or never. So I got pregnant very quickly. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I was so excited. My first time we tried, I got pregnant. And then I had never lost a baby before. So I didn't know that. I always just assume you get a positive pregnancy test and then you're good. That's it. That had been my experience before. And we ended up losing that baby. And I was freaking devastated. But, all my doctors were like, it's your age and the next one will take, I'm sure it'll be fine. So we ended up trying and trying for a few more months and then getting pregnant again a couple months later. And I just had this bad feeling about it the whole time. I'm like, I don't think I just didn't have a good feeling about it. And then I lost that one. And then I was like, okay, something's really wrong. So I started down the route of IVF thinking like I was convinced by one of my doctors that would be more of a sure thing to do that. So we went down that rabbit hole. And at the same time, I was probably spent over 6 figures on this journey to have a baby. I was doing the allopathic route with IVF, but then at the same time, because of my podcast and just knowing a lot of people, I was reaching out to a lot of people in my community, functional medicine doctors, doing a ton of testing, taking a ton of supplements, just doing all the functional stuff with the allopathic stuff, hoping that something would work. Probably spent over $100,000 between those 2 routes, equally expensive between functional medicine testing and then IVF. And then did 2 rounds of IVF that were unsuccessful. We didn't even get any embryos at all, nothing. I never had anything that would manifest. And so the doctors at that point are like, you need to consider donor eggs if you want to have a baby, because it's just not going to happen for you. You're too old. I was 41 and they're like, I had turned 42 at that point. And they're like, you're just too old and you've been trying, and just really consider donor eggs. And my gut was like, that's bullshit. I know that's bullshit. And I interviewed a doctor named Dr. Jack Cruz when I was going through that round of IVF, the second one that had failed. And I talked with him offline, as I did everybody at the time. And he's like, you need to learn about leptin. You need to learn about light, all the things I teach, circadian biology and quantum biology, that is going to get you pregnant. And let go of all the supplements and things that you're taking. They're not helping you. They're probably hindering you, in fact, because they're really high in deuterium, and deuterium leads to slower mitochondrial function, which this is a mitochondrial issue. And something in my body was like, yes, this is the path for me. This is what I need to do, because I don't believe what all these other people are telling me, that I need to keep on pursuing this route with donor eggs, not have a baby that's even really biologically mine. Not that there's anything wrong with that if people want to pursue that route, but in my gut, I knew that wasn't what was meant for me. and that this baby, I had an experience in 2016 because I never thought I was going to have another kid because my daughter was so difficult. But in 2016, I went to see an intuitive medium because I wanted to talk with my dad. He had passed when I was like 18, and I really wanted to talk with my dad. And at that session, a little boy showed up, and he was apparently like jumping up and down. And he's like, Mom, I'm healthy. I'm healthy. And I'm like, what the heck? And my medium was like, there's a little spirit boy that wants you to know he is healthy and you can bring him here if you want to bring him here. And if you don't want to bring him here, it's okay. He's always going to be with you. Like he kind of in that session, this little spirit baby like got on my side and kind of melted himself to me. And she was like, it's okay if you don't want to bring him here. He wants you to know that, but he is always going to be with you. And if you do make that decision to bring him here, he's going to be healthy and he's going to be fine. And he doesn't want you to worry. And that was in 2016. I could never get that out of my head. Right. And so that was kind of what had sent me on this journey. So I kind of just had this spirit boy in my mind. And here's a story. The miscarriages that I had and the IVF that we did, we tested the embryos. They were girls. The ones that I had lost, the miscarriages I had lost, girls. We did an IVF, get 2 embryos, but they had so many genetic abnormalities that they would not allow me to transfer them, girls. So I had, at that point, had 4 girl embryos. So that's another thing that kind of made me not give up on the journey. I was like, okay, this boy is coming, right? So really, just back to the story, I had that intention in my heart. I knew that this boy was trying to come, and I dove into quantum health, circadian biology with both feet, literally, in 2021. Near the end of 2021, probably like September, after I talked to Dr. Cruz, I went on and got trained in quantum biology, level 1 and 2 coaching, started implementing it with a lot of my clients that were just like super stuck. And they were starting to have improvements. I started feeling better really quickly. I actually lost 30 pounds and I wasn't trying to lose weight. I was trying to get pregnant, but I optimized my leptin, which really controls your body weight also, and started sleeping. Like everything in my health just got so much better. And then that January, I was like, well, if this doesn't work, then I'll consider maybe doing like another round of IVF. I was kind of at that point, but I got pregnant in January 2022. And then my son James was born in October, happy, healthy. And he's 7 months old now. He's doing freaking amazing. But it was like, when I found out it was a boy, I was like, okay, this is legit. Like all of this is like just legit, you know? Yeah, I've just really become super passionate about helping people implement these things because it saves them a lot of money and they feel better so much faster. And I feel like it's the way that we really, as humans, are meant to be living in the first place. So, yeah, that's my long story here.
Thank you for sharing. I learned some new things about you. Yeah, I mean, I've talked a lot on this podcast about evolutionary mismatch, right? Like we are the exact same Homo sapiens as our hunter-gatherer ancestors were physiologically, and yet we're living in these totally unprecedented ways. Like it's brand new. Living indoors is brand new to the human species. Artificial lighting is brand spanking new, right? So, I mean, I had heard, the blue block, like Dave fucking Asprey and his blue blockers, and
I know. That's the first time I heard about it. And then that's why I kind of was like, it's bullshit.
Exactly. I'm like,
stupid. No, thank you.
Into now.
Right.
but then as someone who has been extremely interested in ancestral health and like reclaiming whatever bits of those life ways I can in the 21st century, it makes sense. Of course, it makes sense that when we are aligned with the rising and setting of the sun, that's giving signals to our biology. So that's what I really started to understand from you. And okay, first I would like you please to define quantum biology. Like what do we mean when we talk about quantum?
So we're talking about quantum physics also. And so understanding kind of how our bodies work in this quantum way. So a little small stimulus can create a large result, and the cells in our body have what's called quantum coherence. We communicate through the water network in our body, which everyone is so focused on chemical and looking at chemical outputs, looking at cells under a microscope, which they are devoid of the water. So you really don't, you're not getting an accurate picture because you're not looking at the water network. So we're looking at things more on this quantum scale of the coherence within the body, of how our hormones are these messengers, right? And they rely on signals versus putting in a supplement or taking a hormone as a first line of reaction. I'm not totally against that for people who are older, but we're looking at things the wrong way. So that's the way I kind of describe quantum biology for people, is just understanding the body being running on a DC electric current, being electric, and getting energy from sunlight, light, magnetism, water. That's what Dr. Cruz talks about a lot. Our cells are energized by sunlight. Our bodies are energized from touching the earth, receiving electrons, pulling them into the earth, and then again, that water network of the body. The more you study water, you're like, my God, water is everything.
Yeah.
Forget the nutrition is so boring. I'm so tired of talking about it. It's like the water is what's really interesting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a couple water episodes, and I learned from Carrie, your friend, Carrie B.
Oh,
Well,
yes.
that I've just had this total reframe around. So the biochemical view of health is not only modern medicine and pharmaceutical, but it's also herbalism, right? Which is where I've been coming from for the last 15 years. And it's not that it's invalid. It's just that there's a deeper level. And that is, the electrical, intracellular, fascial, lightning speed. It's literally like 1,000 times faster conductivity. And that's not even talking about like the non-locality, between.
Right.
So I feel like, you finding carnivore and being like, okay, this is it. But then you just peel back layers and layers. And I think that's kind of what we're all doing. And so for me, I've shared on the podcast before about, just my completely depleted minerals and like the state of burnout that I'm sort of slowly coming out of. And what I've come to is, for me, the two foundational pieces are the remineralization, because if I'm not having enough electrolytic minerals through my body, that conductivity is very much being blocked, and the circadian rhythm, that's all I'm focusing on. I cannot think about food restriction. I cannot think about nutrition.
Yeah.
Not that I'm eating shit, but Okay, so I'm curious. You've had some big weight gains and weight losses, and I want to understand more about leptin, what it is, and how it is controlled by the sun, or how the interaction between sun and human body mediates these hormones.
Yeah. So leptin is this master circadian signaling hormone. And if you have infertility, if you have hormone imbalance, I'm like, look, what are your leptin levels? Is the first thing that I have people look at is their leptin. A lot of people are leptin resistant. If you're overweight at all, you're leptin resistant. But that was, where I was at. I'm like, okay, something's not right with my fertility. I checked my leptin and it was actually very low. So there's kind of more of an optimal range I like people to be in. And mine was like way under that range. Leptin is, again, a master circadian signaling hormone. It's supposed to dock to your hypothalamus at night when you sleep. And that docking is usually around midnight. So if you're not getting good quality sleep, if you haven't given your body enough time, like if you haven't gone to bed early enough for your body to get into that deeper stage of sleep where that leptin docking can actually happen, you can create leptin resistance. So that's why circadian rhythms are so important. So blue light at night, not getting to bed early enough, eating too late, all of those things are going to block leptin signaling. Insulin competes with leptin for that docking space. So there's a big trend of like eating dates and drinking milk and stuff before bed, like having a bedtime snack. That can actually interfere with leptin signaling. You can become leptin resistant if you're eating too close to bed, because it raises your insulin, and then insulin competes with leptin, and that docking never happens. So when that happens, leptin docking to your hypothalamus, it gives information to your brain about how much stored energy is on your body in body fat, stored glucose in the liver, and then it takes instructions. And so your thyroid function is heavily tied to leptin, because if you are not getting a signal of how much stored energy there is, your body kind of doesn't know what to do. And so a lot of people will have like thyroid issues are huge these days. So your thyroid can really downregulate. That is what happened to me. I had very low T3 hormone, and then your metabolism becomes slow. Then your appetite becomes skewed. And even if you're not eating too much, because that was what had miffed me so much. It's like, I'm eating a freaking carnivore diet. I'm not eating any sugar, any junk food at all. And now I've just gained 20 pounds and this makes zero sense. But I was leptin resistant. That communication wasn't happening and it downregulated my thyroid. Leptin also signals your immune system, signals your sex hormones, because we have to have this information exchange. So it's a really key hormone that wasn't even discovered until 1994. And most doctors, if you ask them about it, know very little to nothing about it. Now, the cool thing is I have courses now, and I have had a lot of doctors actually take my course, which is kind of like, wow, I'm not a doctor, like you're taking my course, but I've created enough interest around it so that a lot of doctors are now understanding the importance of this with their female patients, especially. Men can have leptin resistance also, a lot of them do. But a lot of practitioners are now like, oh, wow, this is something I have been completely missing. So it's a super important hormone. And it was absolutely key for me to reclaim my fertility as well.
Wow. So, okay, let's sort of go throughout a day. And because I had a lot of questions about this, I'm sure everyone does. Like, okay, so what constitutes sunrise and what exactly is the sunrise doing for me? And I've come to think of it as there's like kind of 4 distinct phases in what I'm paying attention to in the day. And you can, tell me if something's wrong or just expound. There's sunrise. There's the time in the morning before the angle of the sun in the sky is at 10 degrees, right? Or is it?
Yeah.
10 degrees.
Yep. 0 to 10 is sunrise. Yeah.
0 to 10. And you can get the Circadian Life app to tell you what's going on, and the D-Minder app I use as well. And then there's the time when UVA rays are available. And this is between 10 and 30 degrees. And it's so fascinating because this changes every single day, literally.
Every day. Yeah. It's so cool. When you look at like the sun in the sky, it does like this infinity over the course of the year. It's a really cool thing. Yeah.
Yeah. We moved into a new house last fall, and we have like just a bigger view sort of than we did before. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so cool to see where the sun rises and sets and how that changes. And we haven't even been here yet. And now that I'm looking at these apps every day too, it's just fascinating. So there's that. And I want to talk about like each distinct phase and what it means. And then there's basically most of the day when at this time of year, May right now, there's a lot of UVB, there's vitamin D available, which is not going to be the case in the wintertime so much where I live. And then there's sunset. And each of these different phases of the day signals different things to our bodies. So
exactly.
Let's start with sunrise.
So sunrise is really where your body starts to make that shift out of melatonin into cortisol. So that hormonal shift is really taking on, like, it starts happening technically after that little hibernation period between 12 and 2. You'll start to get a little bit of a cortisol rise, but you don't want too much, right? So sunrise kind of allows for this gradual shifting totally out of melatonin into cortisol that happens. And then UVA is really where a lot of the magic happens with thyroid hormone, sex hormones, all of those things, serotonin, dopamine, and serotonin that you synthesize in UVA light gets recycled into melatonin that night. So it's like this cool cycle of melatonin getting recycled in serotonin getting it kind of goes in a cycle. So a lot of people don't think like bedtime and how well I sleep depends on just what I do at night and my bed. No, it's actually you're making melatonin, you're harvesting light, your cells are harvesting light, usually in that morning UVA time to be used at night for melatonin to be made. You also make melatonin subcellularly. Your mitochondria makes melatonin in response to near infrared light, which is available throughout the day. And it's about 42% of the sun in the midday sun. So you're making subcellular melatonin. And what that's kind of doing is cleaning up little, it's like your kids leave a bunch of junk around the house, right? And getting that sunlight on your skin during the day, yes, there's vitamin D in the UVB window, but also it's kind of like going around and just kind of cleaning up after your kids during the day when you're getting that near infrared light on your skin, because it's making that subcellular melatonin in your mitochondria, so that when you are sleeping, you're making more of that pineal melatonin, which is only like 5% of the melatonin that we make, can actually work better. You can get more deep cleaning and healing and repair. So again, we always talk about bedtime routine in a cold, dark room and blah, 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 blah. All the biohackers talk about all like this sleep and repair process starts in UVA, right? And kind of continues as you get sunlight on your skin throughout the day, right? So it's this, I mean, we're just like so wonderfully made, and it's just such an intelligent system that nature has designed. And, you know, UV rays, everyone talks about how damaging they are. I have not been able to find any studies, and I always challenge people to show them to me, which no one has in the years I've been talking about this. The studies that have been done on UV and cancer have all been done using narrow band UV lamps, right? So just the only ray that you're getting is UV. You're not getting red, near infrared, all the other rays of sun, all those other colors. You're not getting that because near infrared actually has like a little bit of a sunscreen built into it. So the damage, the ROS created by UV, is actually being cleaned up little by little when that near infrared is mixed in with the UV. So
ROS?
Reactive oxygen species is basically in the mitochondria when energy, which is electrons, is not able to tunnel appropriately because the space between those respiratory proteins is really far apart, which is what basically mitochondrial dysfunction is. Then it creates ROS, which is like inflammation in the body. And not all inflammation is not bad. It's not like this horrible, evil thing. But if you have too many lost electrons, essentially, too much lost energy in your body, that's when you see everything really slowing down. You're getting a lot of inflammation, and your body is just less and less efficient. There's less energy potential in the body.
And isn't there something with the UVA that it helps you actually synthesize and absorb vitamin D when that becomes available later in the day as well?
Yeah. So there's this hormonal cascade that happens when you start your day with sunrise. I always tell people if they're going to do sun exposure in the middle of the day, don't just wake up at like 11 a.m. and go straight outside, right? You want to have prepped your eyes and your skin to get into that stronger UV light, and use an app like Dminder to make sure you're not staying out there too long, because you can burn yourself. You can photo age your skin. It is a thing. I don't care who says it's not, but you can. But when you begin your day with sunrise and UVA, as I mentioned, you know, you've got this hormonal cascade happening from those two different times of the day. And that hormonal cascade is actually prepping your skin so that it can synthesize more vitamin D, and you can create more melanin as well, which is kind of what brings on the tan. If you're wearing glasses, contacts, or sunglasses, remember the signal comes in through the retina via the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is attached to the hypothalamus, signaling all these hormones, all these things to release. If you're wearing sunglasses, glasses, contacts, that is kind of like putting a tarp over a plant and like wondering why it's not growing, right? So all these things work together, and those earlier frequencies, sunrise and UVA, help to precondition your skin.
So I want to talk about just sort of making it practical. You have amazing resources on this that dive deeper, but for me, when I started learning about all this from you about 2 months ago, it was still really freaking cold outside. I was in like a deep fatigue, and I just started by opening my door a few inches and sticking my head out and making sure that the sunrise light, so before the sun is at 10 degrees in the sky, was hitting my eyeballs for, I mean, some days I could only do it for like 1 minute. Some days I would do it for 5 minutes. Now I'm out there I'm out there for half an hour during that phase. And then I'm out there again once the UVA light comes in, and trying to spend as much time as possible out there. But like, it worked as far as resetting my sleep schedule. It very quickly, I just started naturally waking up at 6:30, ready to go to the bathroom, and then ready to go outside and start my day. And now I'm going to bed earlier as well. And I was like, wow, that happened so much faster than I thought it was going to, that like my sleep wake cycles synced to the sun's.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, people are like, I need to buy an alarm clock. I need this. I'm like, you might have to use an alarm. You probably will have to use an alarm like the first few days, but literally most people on like day 4, sometimes even day 3 of doing this consistently with the bedtime routines as well, blocking blue light at night, all that stuff, they're up when the sun comes up. And me, now that I've been doing this a couple of years, it changes throughout the year. So I naturally wake up later in the winter time and earlier in the summertime. My body just kind of like makes these little gradual changes because I'm so synced up to the sun. I'm synced up to moon as well. Like my menstrual cycles have synced also to the moon. And that happened really quickly too, which is another thing. Because when you're seeing sunrise and you're out there, you can usually see a little bit of the moon also. If it's not a new moon, you usually can see a little sliver of the moon as well. So you're getting that moon connection as well. You don't have to go out at night and look at the moon. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. And a lot of women, it's crazy when they do this practice, their cycles will change and they're like, oh, I got my period early, I got my period late. I'm like, okay, but let's look at what happens in the next 28 days. I bet that your body was trying to catch on to a moon cycle, or it's trying to hitch up to a moon cycle. And that happens a lot. It's kind of funny how quickly it happens.
That's so cool. I have noticed that, yeah, the moon is out there when I go out, even though it's light, it's daytime, the sky is blue. And I've really just been transfixed by it, and just really feeling like, oh, so amazing. We can just like see the moon, and it has these crazy effects on all life on Earth. And my period was a couple days late last time. It's interesting. My friend Susie, who's been my buddy and looking at sunrise and sunset every day, hers was just 4 days late. I'm gonna have to let her know about this. I'm curious, is it generally that women's cycles are syncing up to bleed at the new moon?
It's different. And so this is something interesting. A lot of women that are calling in a baby, or that are more in that reproductive age, a lot of them, especially if they're trying to call in a baby, they are bleeding with the new moon and they're ovulating with the full moon, because melatonin is actually a bit of a contraceptive, believe it or not. And so if you think about it, the moon is a brightness that light after sunset, any artificial light, which the moon is not really artificial light, but it's light, it's brightness after sunset, is going to block melatonin production. And so a lot of women that again are kind of calling in a baby, or in their more reproductive fertile years, they'll have that cycle. And then I find a lot of women that are out of that. So I just got my cycle back. My son is 7 months now, but I just have had it now twice. And I had the opposite. So bleed on full moon and then ovulate on the new moon, because I'm not really trying to call in a baby right now. And in women that are kind of shifting into a different phase of their life, or more expressing themselves and being in that phase, they'll find they shift in that way. So it's fascinating to see that change. And it doesn't happen for 100% of people, but a lot of people it happens for. And it's kind of cool to see that.
That's so cool. I think mine is shifting towards bleeding with the new moon, which I've always preferred that in my life.
Yeah.
The calmer energy.
The calm. Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So then there's solar noon, which is different from noon on the clock, because like we're talking about, the sun is constantly shifting where it's at in the sky. And this is when the solar energy is strongest, and when you can synthesize the most vitamin D. If I just like don't have time to be really outside that day, but my app is like, solar noon's coming up. I'm like, okay, I'll at least go sit outside for like 5-10 minutes right now and know that I got something accomplished vitamin D wise.
Yeah, and all the colors of the spectrum of the sun are available at solar noon. That's like the time of day when everything is available. So it's kind of a cool time. If you can take a little sun break or a light break during that time, it's a great time to go out. And then, yeah, if you're in summer months, then that's when UVB is going to be the strongest. And if you are trying to get some vitamin D, if you're a lighter Fitzpatrick skin type, which the D-Minder app can kind of help you determine that as well, then you're not going to spend as much time out there as you would, let's say you got the first part of UVB or you're getting that last part of UVB to get vitamin D. So the UV index is not going to be usually as high in the latter or earlier parts of the day when UVB begins to show up.
And then what happens in our brains and bodies when we view the sunset and then moving into the evening block the blue light that comes from our screens and our light bulbs?
Yeah, so melatonin is just like one of my favorite things to talk about lately. I'm just so fascinated by it. It's so important for our bodies and for all the healing and repair to actually happen. We need melatonin. And when we are viewing sunset, it actually starts to cue the body to lower cortisol, to kind of turn the cortisol down because daytime is making cortisol, start to turn that down. And then we go inside, put on our blue blockers and hopefully get to bed at before 10 o'clock. I like people too. 9 o'clock is great. Before 10, definitely, if you can. Your body starts to really stop making that cortisol and start to turn on melatonin production. Viewing sunset can also help offset if there is a little bit of blue light exposure, which is not a license to go blast yourself with blue light, but it can offset a little bit of that. If, like, let's say someone turns on an overhead light or someone's got the TV on and you walk by without your blue blockers, it can help a little bit to curb some of the negative effects because you've just gotten a nice strong signal for your body to start winding down. But, artificial light at night I feel like it's the new smoking, honestly. And the science is very abundant in this area. There's a lot of research in this area. And I'm always like, if you're curious, just type it into your trusted search engine, blue light at night and obesity, or artificial light at night and obesity, artificial light at night and cancer, artificial light at night and Alzheimer's. Like, there is like a ton of stuff that's going to pop up. And if you think about why are all these hormonal cancers and obesity and type 2 diabetes and mood disorders, Alzheimer's, why are all these things so heavily associated with artificial light at night? Because, again, artificial light at night sends a signal via the retina, suprachiasmatic nucleus to the brain to start producing cortisol. Blue light is really what our body takes a cue from, the blue light in the sky, because all blue light's not bad. When you go outside, I'm getting a lot of blue light right now, but it's also balanced out with the other spectrum colors of the sun, and it's ever changing. Like a blue light on our phone is 5,700 kelvins. That's the same amount of intensity that you're going to be getting in the noonday June sun, right? So should we be looking at our phone at 10 o'clock at night in the middle of winter? Hell no, because you're telling your body it's noon in the middle of June for it to make the corresponding amount of cortisol. And cortisol opposes melatonin. So you can't make them both at the same time. So if you're exposing your eyes to that artificial light at night, then you're not making melatonin. You're continuing to make cortisol and putting yourself at risk for all of these things because melatonin is this master antioxidant that cleans, like I said earlier, it cleans up the cells. Autophagy and apoptosis happen because of melatonin. And melatonin also, like I was talking about earlier with ROS, the electrons that get lost in the space between respiratory proteins in the mitochondria, melatonin actually shrinks the space between respiratory proteins in the mitochondria so the mitochondria can repair in our sleep. So it's, again, people just aren't really educated about this. And so they will lay in their phone, in their bed and scroll and turn on overhead lights and watch TV and let their kids have iPads and screens and stuff. And people are getting sicker and sicker. And I think that this is a huge contributor for a ton of people. And they're like, I need to try this diet. I need to try this exercise plan. I need to try this food plan. And I'm like, have you tried blue blockers first? Have you tried cutting off the lights, letting your home be a little bit more of a circadian friendly environment? And maybe, yeah, if you want to try healthier diet, I'm all for that. I think it's important to eat seasonally, locally, ancestrally, but you may not have to like kill yourself to be perfect on this diet if you've got these other things in place, because your body's getting the signals that it needs, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting to me how people in my life who I've shared this with are just so resistant, right, to not being on their phone at
Yeah.
night
Yeah.
or to, I mean, I've always been sensitive to light. So as soon as it's dark, we have like low lighting just from a lamp or two. And so how about red shifting your phone? Does that do much?
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
I keep my phone screen red all the time, honestly, unless I have to post, on Instagram and I need to see what the colors actually look like.
Yeah, me too.
Um, because it's unfiltered blue light, and that is heavily linked to myopia.
Mm,
And again, there's a lot of research around this one. People to blame the sun for myopia. Again, the sun has all the other colors balancing so that we're nature doesn't make mistakes. Like, this is not an accident that we have all these other colors to balance out that blue light, and the blue light changes throughout the day. But if we're looking at noonday sun constantly, even if it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 10 o'clock in the morning, we're still sending a confusing signal, and it's eventually going to create eyesight issues. And that was one of the weirdest things for me when I started this lifestyle that I didn't really think was going to happen. It was like, I had a lot of stuff like that. I'm like, oh, that's weird that fixed that.
mhm.
But when I started wearing blue blockers, my eyesight got better, because
Mm,
I was like, well, I'm 40 and your eyesight starts getting
mhm.
bad after you're 40. So I guess I'll have to make that appointment to see eye doctors at some point. And then I was really being consistent with these light hygiene practices, keeping my phone screen red, wearing the blue blockers, and my eyesight improved. And I
Mm.
was like, huh, that's interesting.
That's so cool. Yeah, I've been keeping my screen on redshift all day for years, and I'm 42 and my eyes are still perfect. I keep being like, is it
Yep.
going to happen? Everyone says it happens in your 40s, but thus far it's
Yep.
been just fine. And then I also now at night, if I am going to be on my phone, I wear the blue blockers, even though my phone's on redshift, because I have
Same.
found it makes such a I can't stay awake once I get those blue blockers on.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. That's exactly what's supposed to happen.
It's so helpful.
Yeah.
And talking to you now is actually really helping me further clarify that I just need to go to bed when my 6-year-old daughter goes to bed because she's falling asleep around 8:30. And then I'm like, cool, it's my me time, right? That's like,
Yep.
we get so used to that when they're little.
Mhm.
And even though I'm like kind of forcing myself to stay awake, even though the red light and my eyes is making me so tired, but now what's happening is I'm getting up before her, which has never happened. It's always been she was an early riser, and I'm like,
Yep.
oh, wake your dad up while I sleep in, and then I'm like dragging all day, right? But since I've reset, I'm up an hour and a half before she is. And if I just start going to bed when she does, letting go of that idea that this hour I have afterwards is everything, I'll have that time instead in the morning when I have a natural surge of cortisol through my body from viewing the sunrise. And it's just like that energy flows so much better in my life than trying to cram it all into the nighttime hours.
That's so hard as a mom, because I get that, having a daughter with a lot of special needs, as well as now a 7-month-old. And it's like, man, babies are they're exhausting sometimes. And you just want to turn your brain off and disassociate a little bit sometimes. Like, let me just scroll on my phone. But it's not self-care. I have to reframe it for myself and be like, this is not actually self-care. This is going to damage my hormones. It's going to mess with my sleep. And then the other thing is, there's a high amount of non-native EMF that comes from our phones. And, our pineal gland senses non-native EMF as a light form. So just because our eyes can't actually see it, the pineal gland can sense non-native EMF, and it's a form of light that can also interfere with melatonin production. And so this is, everyone's like I said earlier, dark room and blackout curtains and da da da. And I'm like, yeah, but if your Wi-Fi is like right next to your bed, or your phone is charging next to your body, or you're wearing an Apple Watch because you want to track your sleep, you are interfering with the body's ability to make melatonin, because again, your pineal gland is sensing that as a form of light. And so that's the other thing of I'm like, okay, I need to really give my body the best chance possible, go put the phone in another room and get my butt to bed, you know?
Yep, I moved my like electric strip as far away from my bed as possible because we use a sound machine at night. I have a teenage daughter who makes sound, so I'm like, I do need some electricity going, but yeah, I never ever have my phone charging near my bed. And we set up that timer to turn off the Wi-Fi in the evening time, have it off for like 8 hours while we sleep. And I'm curious, do you know if your Wi-Fi isn't on your phone, if you're just on cellular? Is that less EMF coming off? Is there still some coming off?
I mean, there's still going to be some coming off. I try to keep my phone on airplane mode.
Oh, yeah.
In another room. And then even on airplane mode, you get scalar waves. There's always going to be something coming off. So the only way to really fully protect yourself from it is put it in a Faraday bag or, but there's the inverse square law. So the further away that you are from that device, the better. And then it's also going to depend on your proximity to towers and things like that. So using like a tri-field 2, which is an EMF meter, or Safe and Sound, both of those are good to kind of actually see what is going on, can be helpful. Or getting a building biologist if you're like struggling with weird, mysterious health issues, having a building biologist come out, take a look at things to see what's optimal in your house. That can be helpful too. But yeah, I mean, I just think distance is the best thing.
Mm-hmm. It just all comes back to how we evolved to be on the earth and all now the modern day things that disrupt that signaling, because the body is incredibly intelligent. It knows what to do. Mm-hmm. These signaling systems are in place. The electrical conductivity, evolved over time to be what it is. And I always say modern living, I just feel like I'm constantly like, like defending myself with something new. And it's true. And I know, some people just give up and like, it's not even worth it. It's too much, but I disagree. It's super overwhelming and we've all made a lot of mistakes on the path.
It is.
I feel like there's like a tide turn where we're figuring out some really basic things like this, like light signaling and mineralization. It's like these are like foundational.
Yep. I agree. Yeah. And I always think about just like making small changes. I always tell people the morning routine is so important to start there. Yeah. And that can usually move the needle a lot for people as far as energy goes. And then you're going to find, and even with the food thing, because everyone's like, oh, I'm going to start a new diet. I'm going to do all this thing. I'm going to have this. And I'm like, don't try to do it all in the same freaking week, because you're going to feel like it's too hard and you can't do it. So start with light, do your light routines first. And believe it or not, the morning light is really, really a rich time that neurotransmitters are being synthesized as well. So dopamine and serotonin, those can actually help with appetite regulation. They do help with appetite regulation. Morning light is extremely helpful. And then again, getting that leptin signaling happening again, because you're working on your morning and evening routines and maybe popping out a few times a day to actually get natural light on your skin and eyes. But just doing those little things can actually help you move towards a healthier way of eating. I don't force it with people. Like I was always like, nutrition first, cut out everything, have to eat this way. And I'm like, okay, no, let's do these things first. And then a lot of times people naturally start to gravitate more towards like a local seasonal type of way of eating, and their appetite regulates.
Mm-hmm. So you talk about like go outside and view the sunrise. And so we're not meaning looking directly at the sun, although you kind of can when it's very low in the sky.
I do.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I do. It's different for everyone. Like I don't tell people to do that. I'm like, don't do it if it's bothering your eyes. But a lot of people can get to the point where they can sun gaze and it's okay.
People work up to it when it's super low on the horizon, like just coming up or just about to go down. I've experimented with it, but gaze, towards the area, towards the
general direction. Yeah.
Yep. Where the sun is coming up or going down. In the morning, do that before you look at your phone. Right? Yes. How many of us just immediately go to our phones?
Oh, I did it for years.
Me too. Along with the last thing before bed, which I want to go back to what you said, because I think it's so important. It's not relaxing scrolling on our phone. It might feel like it is because your body is in repose or your body is still, but It's not relaxing.
It's not.
No.
It's not. And then you know, when you're scrolling, you don't know what you're going to get. Like,
Yes.
especially if you're like on Instagram, like looking at reels, it's like, oh, this is funny. This is funny. Oh, this woman's husband died. Oh, this woman's child died. Like, I hate that. And I will fall. Sometimes I'll kind of scroll a little bit in the middle of the day because I want to get ideas for a reel or hear like, oh, that's a fun audio. I could make a reel using that. Like, so occasionally I will scroll through reels like that and I will get sent reels and I'm like, that's freaking devastating. Like Instagram will send me funny, funny, funny. Oh my God. Funny, funny. Oh shit. That's horrible. You know, and then you feel like all these different emotions. You're like, should I do that before bed? No, I should not. I should not be doing that before bed.
Actually,
it's more of a time of going inward.
Yeah, it probably has to do with resetting my circadian rhythm, but I'm just like so much less interested in my phone and in Instagram than I have been for 11 years. I've been on the app for 11 years. It's been a major part of my life. Everyone listening probably found me there, but it's just like this. I'm just not interested. It's not been difficult to put it down as I'm trying to live my actual life.
Well, blue light is also extremely, it creates a lot of dopamine as well. And so when you turn your phone screen on red and have on blue blockers, I find people even just putting their phone screen on red, they pick up their phone and they use it less because they're not getting that huge dopamine hit from looking at that huge burst of blue light that's inappropriate unless, you know, it's the middle of the day in June and you're looking at it. It's, yeah. And so people have a lot less of that reward from looking at a red phone screen than they would if they were looking at this big, you know, blue lit screen.
Yeah. Have you ever put your phone on grayscale?
Oh yeah, that's no fun either.
You're just like, oh, this is completely interesting. I don't care what my phone shows me. I'm not interested. It's so interesting.
Exactly.
That light and those colors signal our brain like that.
Yep.
Thank you so much for your time, Sarah. I'm so grateful for this. I just want to share the news, and that's what we're doing. And so you have so many resources, and I'm just thinking of like all the questions people like. I live in a city. You live in a city. I have kids. You have kids. You have a baby. You know, all these reasons why things can be hard. People who are shift workers, or so you have answers. Is what I'm trying to say.
I do.
You have so much free information on your Instagram, but yeah, just tell folks, you know, where they can find you and all your courses and all that.
Yeah. And I'll send you a list of links that they can access all these things. But I have on Instagram, it's at Sarah Kleiner Wellness. I have a free guide to building your perfect circadian quantum day. And I'll put a link that you can share with your audience for that. I have an FAQ guide that's got over like 100 questions, like the ones you just mentioned, shift workers. I live in a city. I've got kids. How do I do this? I've kind of gone through and answered all those questions in my free guide. And then I have courses for people who want to dive deeper, from, you know, how to reset their leptin, a quantum nutrition course. I've got a whole bunch of different courses that people can do if they, again, want to learn more about this and dive a little bit more deeply as well.
Yeah, harnessing the power of the sun is the one that really answered all my questions about circadian rhythm and totally changed my life. And I'm really interested in the leptin one because I gained, I don't know, 30, 40 pounds in the last year without really changing my diet too much. I don't eat too much. It's my metabolism's broken. My signaling systems are all broken in my body. And so it's inspiring to hear how helpful it has been for people.
Yeah, it has. It's super helpful. And I have women, you know, it gets harder as you get into your 40s. And I have women in their 50s, 60s, 70s. I even got a woman this weekend who's in her 80s just thanking me she had lost weight with the program. I'm like, okay, awesome. So cool. So yeah.
How great to share information that isn't restrictive and does no harm and just allows innate biological intelligence to surface.
Exactly. I love it.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking these medicine stories in. I hope they inspire you to keep walking the mythic path of your own unfolding self. I love sharing information and always put any relevant links in the show notes, which you can find by just scrolling down from wherever you pushed play on this episode. You can find all past episodes and our handmade herbal medicine at mythicmedicine.love. We've got reishi, lion's mane, elderberry, St. John's wort, mugwort, yarrow, redwood. We've got body oils, sleep medicine, heart medicine, earth essences, and more. While you're there, be sure to check out our fun quiz, which healing herb is your spirit medicine? It's lighthearted, but the results are really in depth and designed to bring you into closer alignment with both the medicine that you're in need of and the medicine that you already carry and can bring to others. If you love the show, please consider supporting it at patreon.com/medicine stories. It is so worth your time. There are dozens and dozens of killer bonuses there, ebooks, bonus conversations, guided meditations, giveaways, resource guides, links to online learning, coupon codes, behind the scenes stuff. And the best of it is available at the $5 a month level, and it literally makes the show possible. You can also subscribe or follow, depending on which podcast app you prefer. The music that opens the show is by Marie Sue from her beautiful song Wild Eyes. That's MarieeSiou. Thank you, my beautiful friend Marie, and thank you for listening. I look forward to next time.